much for joining us here at the Imagine This Film Festival. We've got some amazing filmmakers, and so they're all going to wave at you right now. We're just saying hi. We know a lot of you won't see this until after you've watched the film. Some of you might be watching the films right now. So this is going to be very informal, very casual, a kickback session with the filmmakers that we've got here. So I'm going to start off with Edward, and Edward, just kick us off with project name and then a little bit about the film, and then I'll go ahead and popcorn around.
Good morning on my end in LA. So I am the director of Rear short film. So the film tackles a topic about corporal punishment and how it's still legal in the school systems in the South, specifically in Mississippi for my film, and then specifically how it just affects Black families. Just recently, there was a incident in Texas where a child was bruised and our principal had to be they were arrested, but then they had charges started against them, but then they were let go after that. And so they've returned to school now. So these things are still happening, and I just had to make this film because I'm from Mississippi, and I was a victim of it when I was younger, and just to spread more awareness that these things are still happening to young children, especially Black children. And specifically with this story told through the lens of a mother, and that's why we felt it was a great fit for this film festival.
It's very powerful, very powerful.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Let's go to Fadia.
Hello. I'm Fadia Carmel Marcelin, and I actually was the actress who played the mother in Rear. So I am very happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Kiki.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kiki. I'm also in LA. Hey, Edward. I'm the director of Pigeon. Pigeon is a short film about a woman in her mid-40s going through a breakup and feeling invisible in the world. And she comes across a wounded pigeon on the streets of New York on Christmas Eve, and it kind of becomes her mirror in many ways. And as she tries to save this bird, she tries to save herself.
Such a great film. I love that you had Alex Mack in there. I just saw the
Hello.
back. I know. Great. Great job. Justine.
Hi, everyone. I'm Justine. I am the writer and director of Koi. And Koi is a short narrative film focusing on a Japanese-American family, specifically the bond between two sisters and the connection that keeps them together even when one is gone.
And the pens are gorgeous, but yes. V.
Hi, everyone. I'm V, or Vanessa Sweet. I created the short film Amplifying Feedback Loop, where I'm the director and animator. It is a 2.5-minute call to action film, specifically about the climate crisis and some of the inevitability that we are facing, and in a hopes to advocate for community action.
The words were beautiful, by the way. Amazing film. Yes. Lisa.
Hey, I'm Lisa Ferris. I'm also in LA, so hello. I am the producer of Romanova, which is a short film about a soldier who, after her unit is destroyed, finds herself alone in the desert and is rescued by an enemy combatant who has information that can lead to the end of the war. So it goes into what happens when a person who you've been taught is your enemy for all things is actually someone who you need to work together with. So what happens when we put that aside and come together?
I love seeing a woman in this role so much, just because my mom is a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. And so, yes, I was very taken with that. Thank you for honoring women.
Yes.
Lori.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Apologies, I am at work, so I might be a little in and out today. But yes, I am the writer, director, and producer of Remedial, the short film. And Remedial is a coming-of-age drama about a young boy who relocates to Houston, Texas after a devastating loss. And as his behavior becomes increasingly disconcerting, his new homeroom teacher misdiagnoses his PTSD with ADHD. So it's showing the disparity of young children who are being misdiagnosed within the educational system and just the harrowing effects of it. So yes, I'm so incredibly happy to be sharing our film with you all today. So thank you for having us.
I love it. I love it. I'd have to say you and Edward, the films with the school setting, extremely powerful, right? And it just makes it more accessible for people to understand these real life issues that they're not even aware of. So thank you both. Thank you, everybody. Amazing films, as I said before. So we're going to get intimate and cozy right now and talk about vulnerability. So how was it? Yeah, Lisa's or Kiki's face also was like, oh no, vulnerability. But you all had to be vulnerable in order to share your story. So I want to go ahead and talk about that. How was that process for you, especially making a short? How was it going? This is what I need to show, and I'm ready now to tell the story. Like, was there anything that happened that got you to be like, we're ready. We need to tell the story now. We'll go ahead and start with V for this one, especially with climate control.
Yeah. So I was going through my head about what you were asking. And I honestly feel like for me this time, it was a lot easier to tap in to rage. But I had a previous film screen at Imagine in 2018 called Wild Woman. And that one, I think, was very hard for me to be vulnerable or to tap in to that emotional element of it. But for this one, I think that it was actually quite easy for me. It's just like looking at my research, and when I was able to do a community workshop in Fairbanks, Alaska in 2017 that helped to inspire this film. And it is very a guttural feeling, and it was very easy, I think, in this one to tap into it. But for me, I think the output and getting it to be honed to where I want it to be, we always want to keep adjusting, right? So I think that for me, it's more like, I wish there was more. I wish there was more of the poem in this film than what is shared in 2.5 minutes.
Love it. Love it. Fadia?
Hello. I think that it was a beautiful, I would say, like, it was more cathartic for being part of this project, because I had no idea that corporal punishment was still taking places in a lot of areas. I'm from the Caribbean, and so I just immediately thought, like, if you're going to get spanked, can kids just do it by their parents, but not at the school? But being able to have a person play my son and go through something like this, even though I'm not a mother, it just immediately, like, a protective instinct just immediately kicked in. And throughout the time, I mean, we were even calling each other mother and son, like, throughout the time, like during rehearsal, during set, in between takes. And I just felt like I wanted to protect him. So when I got to go through the actions in the story of what Laura goes through, it was a little healing for me for when, like, towards, like, at the end of the film, when at least she gets to, like, take over and say, like, I'm taking charge of taking care of what happens to my son. But then it was hard because I found times during in between takes of just, like, really sitting with what was taking place, especially when we were at the school, just, like, looking around going, like, this is something that happens every day to a lot of kids, ongoing. It was tough, but like I said, because I got to go through that journey of her helping her son out, it was a bit cathartic, but it was still, like, heartbreaking to know that it's just something that still takes place.
Edward, I want to talk with you for a second about that, just because, this is your experience, like, you've experienced this. So when I guess your level of vulnerability during this film, like, how did you feel seeing it, when you were directing that? How did it go for you?
I think the biggest thing that stuck out to me was the bathroom scene when he reveals the bruises to her. Because that scene happened to me when I was younger, and I don't think I really understood the weight of that, because at that moment I was just like him. I was trying to hide it because I didn't want to get in more trouble with my mom, and I didn't understand the rage that she felt, because it was always like, okay, she always spanked me at home. I didn't understand what the big deal was. I thought I was going to be further discipline. And I think just seeing that play out on screen really hit an emotional level for me, just going back to that moment and then just going full circle. So I think everything with the child and the mother, with that scene and the picture scene, because the picture scene was a lot of uncomfortability with especially our DCS actor, and it's just trying to put the actors in that moment where, you know, we always watch television where there's so many strong directors that have been working that are able to pull off these emotional scenes, and then when you actually get in the moment, you're trying to bring these actors up to speed, and just like what we're doing is very uncomfortable on set, but what we're trying to portray is so important to audience members. So it's just really trying to be able to have the knowledge to speak to each actor, to let them know the mind space to be in, to pull those scenes off. So I think that was the biggest vulnerability parts, with those little small intimate moments.
Amazing. I know that there's a lot of emerging filmmakers that are going to be watching this, so you guys are helping them kind of tap into that portion of what makes a great film too. So thank you for sharing that. Kiki, what about for you?
This is a true story of Liz, who is the writer of this script. So in many ways, I felt like her protector and her facilitator of kind of bringing what she wanted to say into the world. She put a lot of her story into it. So I think just in terms of the dinner scene with her dad, I think that was really hard for her to watch and see it come to life. I mean, writing it is one thing, but then seeing really great actors bring it into human form is another. And so, yeah, I think part of my responsibility then becomes making sure it's told right. And to me, that's making sure that the people who are saying those words are the right cast and are doing it in a way that honors everything she went through and everything she's trying to say. And then also how that kind of relates to the bigger world.
Lori, what about you? Thanks.
Yeah, so yes. So for me, this is a very personal story for me as well. This is based on my own life. And of course, I went on to teach years later after I was misdiagnosed with ADHD. And I think for me, in terms of vulnerability, I think that the hardest thing for me, I guess back then when I was teaching, was seeing young children who had also been misdiagnosed, and they're kind of going throughout their day wondering if anybody sees me. And that's kind of the thought that I had in my mind when I was going forward and making this film. Does anyone see me? Does anyone hear me? And I think for our protagonist, Will, and for his mother, they're both going through their own forms of depression and PTSD. So it's hard for them to kind of see each other. And I think that was the toughest thing about writing it and just kind of going back into that mindset. But I hope that resonated and translated through the film for sure.
It did. Thank you. Justine?
Yeah, I think for me, as a Japanese American, I'm very passionate about the representation of Asian American women on film, specifically Japanese American women. So I think for my film, in terms of vulnerability, I really have to give kudos to my cast, Kana, Kei, and Akiko, especially for how they really took these characters in ownership and sort of saw how they could develop it in their own unique way. And for Kana, especially, who's the lead, who plays Ayumi, one of these ways in which we express her character is through dance, which is sort of a unspoken form of language and communication, but is one that's equally as powerful as words, I believe. So being able to work with her and sort of like workshop choreography, but also her own improv too into the film was really special.
Amazing. Yeah, those dance scenes were really powerful, how you intertwine them in the story. It's great. All right, Lisa.
To be totally honest, I think I feel most vulnerable when talking about the movie.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Because I think one thing that happens is you sort of create it and then you have it, and then when you put it out into the world, it doesn't belong to you anymore. And so it isn't so much what we thought it was about, but whatever anyone else takes away from seeing it. But the writer director of this particular film came to it in the late spring of 2020, which was a very sort of seismically shifting, vulnerable time for all of us. We're in the midst of a global pandemic and in the midst of the what happened with George Floyd, and then the protests following that, and then this like seismic sort of shift in consciousness of people waking up and finally like seeing everything that was going on at that point. And so I think we all were just in a vulnerable place in the world. And so you sort of take whatever a very big concept, which is, for us, it was like a war, and then like an intractable war that had been going on for a very long time. And then you just try to create like an intimate story between two people. So in the midst of a big concept, you just see kind of like the humanity of two individuals, which on the one hand is something that we were, conscious of while we were doing it. And then I think, I don't know if anybody else experiences this also, but you have like an idea. And then once you see what is actually like the footage that you have, and the story that you tell can sometimes you learn and see and experience new things that come up. And what I've noticed in these kind of panels, or when you put the work out into the world, is we have talked to people who have experienced something very different from what we initially intended, but is like a really beautiful response. So you start to realize, you're like, oh yes, I completely thought of that, and that was intentional, and yes, but really it's the beauty of putting art into the world and allowing people to bring their own lives into what they see and make their own connections.
Yeah, I definitely get the end result. I know yesterday when we were talking to the block, a lot of them were talking about how the vulnerability of writing these films or being directing these films allowed them to release. And that's something I think for artists that it's good to take care of yourself too. So I know that sometimes these projects can be a bit challenging from that end too. So this is all great for you guys to share that. Then we wanted to ask, now this is a question that any debut filmmakers in here, I'm trying to see anybody debut first time. No? Okay, then I can ask this question for everybody because it's always the same answer. Surprises. Any surprises you had while making your film? I love V. I'm going to come to you because the reaction was so strong. I got to go there. What was it?
I don't know if it was surprises so much as, for me, you often, build this ideal of what you have in your head. And then if you've got, a time frame, you have to work within that time frame. And I had a couple of grants on this film that were very, very wonderfully helpful. But because I had to kind of play with some pre-production stuff, and I worked with an AR version of this film, that took up a lot of time. So my surprises were, how am I going to create this film based upon what I want, match my vision of it, keep to my intent, while also I've got a truncated remainder of my time to deliver that, which everybody encounters. It's not the first time I've encountered it, but it was perhaps the first time that I created a film especially in animation. We do a lot of pre-production work where we plan out every shot ahead of time. We are very, very specific and very precious with those shots because animation is so time intensive. And while I did have this in my process, at about 3 months in, storyboards being done, animatic being done, I looked at this thing and I went, oh no, I don't like you. And went to scratch with it, honestly, almost, went in and edited it up, brought this poem that I had written the beginning of the summer that I had started it, and had to trust my process, which, at some point we always question our process, but to do that and to bring in just the excellent voice of Fleecy Malay, who is a slam poet currently living in Melbourne, Australia, and just that surprise of my own decision making, I think, and feeling like, wow, this is a really big risk, but it just feels right. And perhaps the surprise of trusting my gut enough to cut production time, in half and kind of start from scratch.
Awesome, honest answer. Love it. Anyone else want to share? Yes, Kiki.
I think our biggest surprise was the wildlife fund that we ended up shooting at, which was in the story. Liz finds a place to bring her wounded pigeon to get it looked at, and we had to find somewhere real, and that was like our big production challenge, was finding a place that had live birds that would be safe for us to work with and safe for the birds, et cetera, et cetera. And we ended up finding this place in Long Island. That was one of the trippiest experiences of my production life, was standing at midnight talking to a crow. So the wildlife fund was our biggest surprise, and our actors' biggest surprise. I think they all figured we'd be working with not real wildlife, and we ended up finding a place.
That's a note for anybody who's watching this right now. Wildlife. Just keep in mind, you might be talking to a crow at the end of the night at midnight. So, okay, great.
True.
Anyone else have any surprises? Yes, Lisa.
I mean, I think the biggest takeaway from this is I learned that the sentence, "Oh, it'll be easy, we can just," and then like fill in the blank, is not a real. Getting a lot. Okay, yeah. So that's a shared experience. But I think one of my biggest surprises and pleasant surprises is how willing a group of people will be to go out in the middle of the desert in April, like Death Valley, and work for basically free or nothing to make something happen, and just how game everyone was to get the thing done. So.
Hey, Lisa. Or Lori?
Yes.
Okay, I was like, I couldn't tell who was speaking. I heard the background. All right, go ahead, Lori.
No, it's okay. I think the biggest, excuse my coworkers, I think the biggest surprise for me was, of course, we shot in 2020, the end of 2021. So around that time, COVID was kind of clearing up a little bit, and then a second wave came about. So we ended up losing all of our locations. It was just an amazing experience. Amazing.
Growth, yes.
And the home that we ended up getting for the film, they had this amazing pool, amazing view. And when we got there, they were like, "Oh yeah, the pool is heated. It's great. It's fantastic." And they left for the day, and then the pool ended up not working. So it was freezing cold, and we only had like an hour to do it all. So that was always, I think the biggest takeaway from that was, don't shoot during a pandemic, and always make sure that the pool is heated before you get there. So we thought it was all going to be great, and then it wasn't. So that was a fun experience of all of us jumping in to, of course, rally around the actors, so, and making sure that they felt supported. So yeah,
wow,
big surprise for us.
Yeah, no, I would say. Justine or Edward, do you have any?
Yeah, I think outside of the cost kept going up. Well, I know one of our child actor and his mom, their flight got canceled the day before the shooting, so we had to figure out how to get them here and just book a new flight. But I think other than that, being on set and our two child actors in the school, we had like all those extras with the kids. We had about 20, 30 kids running around, and then I wanted to rehearse their scene by the locker, and all of a sudden they got camera shy. And they didn't know, they couldn't remember how to do anything. I was trying to prep them and get them back on track, but like all the kids, they were like all these Mississippi kids that had never seen what we had been doing or what we were doing, and they were just crowded around them, and so they just were just afraid to just project themselves. So I brought them over to a classroom. I called their moms in. Then we just had like a good old fashioned just Southern talk. Like we just spoke about just everything, just trying to get them back up to speed, have their mothers I had to really bring their mother's will in to help them get in, because what I was doing was only going so far. So I had to use my directing hat to get the assistance of their mothers to help them get on. And so we eventually got it on rolling. But that's one of those unexpected things that you don't think about when you're writing. It's like, okay, we're gonna cast the kids, we're gonna go in, it's gonna be great. And then when you get there, it's like, okay, how do you deal with 12-year-old kids having, getting camera shy? And it's like, what do? Like, you you can't just go with what they're giving you because the energy, they were almost like mumbling their lines at one point. So you have to kind of think quick on your feet. There's time, there's 30 kids running around, there's also 30 parents running around, there's this crew. So you have to think quick. You got to go and regroup and figure out, okay, what can get the scene going as quick as possible. And so that's pretty much what my quick response was.
So funny. Yesterday, in one of the blogs, somebody was talking about that this was the first time they had worked with kids. So they were like, you only have 8 hours. And then so many things are happening within that time. So was this your first time working with children as well, or?
Yeah, I think I worked with like a child, but not 30. So
Yeah,
that was my ambition. I was like, oh, it's gonna be great. You know, and then like the biggest thing was that hallway scene with the movement. It's like, okay, you see it's like, okay, kids are interacting, having fun, but like when we got there, all the kids were like, all right, what do we do? So it's like I'm trying to have all this energy where everybody's looking at me crazy, trying to tell them what to do and create excitement like where kids are in school. So you really have to kind of look insane for a little bit, but you have to like really think about what the end result will look like, because you're gonna look silly in the middle of it. Like, yeah, you high five, you having fun, you talking to her on the side, but it's like you look crazy in the moment, but you got to really think about the end goal.
That's so good. That's so good. Justine, did you have any surprises? If not, I mean, hey, you'd be one of the first ones and we would congratulate you, but did you have any surprises?
No, always surprises, always surprises. I think two main ones for me. I actually initially thought of the idea for Koi about a year and a half ago because I was creating it for my graduate school applications. So the very first iteration of Koi was very rough, 5-minute short little thing, just shot on my little tripod with my own camera. But I think being able to come back to this project, redevelop it, and work with an amazing cast and crew has just been a beautiful world of new surprises and like delightful pleasures that I didn't even know were possible working with these people. But specifically, I think the second biggest surprise was just letting the actors do what they do best and just let it all out on screen. So for a large part of the audio for the film is just from the actors, again, improvising. And I just said, you know, go at it. You're the characters. I'm just going to follow you around and film you. And we got some really beautiful coverage from that. So again, very grateful for my cast and crew.
Awesome. Awesome. Dale, thanks for joining us.
Oh, I am so sorry I'm late. It's early here on the West Coast.
This is casual. You have so many LA brothers and sisters and people here, so you are good.
I tend to sleep late, so hello. I came on and went, oh, look, there's a Zoom. Hi, everyone. So glad to see you all. I am the writer, director, producer of Entwined, in case you didn't know. Hello.
And can you give the audience just a little bit of information about the film? And then we were talking, as you could hear, about surprises that might have happened on set that you just did not anticipate. So
Got it. Entwined is the story of a couple who are in their 60s. They're standing in front of the same painting. They've both been drawn to the same painting, and he's Black, she's white. And after a moment, they realize that they know each other, that they had in fact been boyfriend, girlfriend in high school almost 50 years ago, before these racist bullies scared them apart. And they haven't seen each other since then. So the film goes back and forth between them now and what happened in the past. So you see their younger selves, and basically their love has never gone away, and it reemerges here.
it's stunningly beautiful. I love looking at the I almost called it a photo, but it's a painting. The painting is beautiful.
Yeah.
It has its own story as well while they're standing there. So it's beautiful. Did you have any surprises while you were on set or during filming at all that you did not anticipate? We're trying to let filmmakers know the real process.
Yes. I think the biggest surprise is how many times an airplane went by. I mean, right, everybody? I mean, it's like stop for plane, hold for plane, back to one. You know, I mean, it was just constant. And or someone would drive by in a motorcycle, you know. So there was a lot of that going on. And I don't think I was quite prepared for how many stops and starts we would have because of that.
Absolutely. I think that that is something that people don't realize unless you're on a set, that these things happen and you need to build in time and preparation for them. So,
Exactly.
so good. Thank you for sharing that. We have 10 minutes left, so I've got 2 more questions for you guys. First one is best piece of advice. Of course, you know that that's going to be like a generic question on panels like this, but the biggest piece of advice you received as a filmmaker. We can go ahead and start with Kiki on this one. Oh, or not.
Can I have a minute? Can I have a minute?
Yes, yes. You want to think on that? Then I'm going to go to anybody who's ready. Anybody ready with that best piece of advice? Okay, Lori.
Yes, the best piece of advice, it's funny, I actually got this piece of advice after I finished the film, but I was working for Paramount directly after I finished the film, and my boss, we had a really big shoot day that was coming up, and we went to tech scout the location, and everything was just wrong. And these are, people who have been in this industry for 20, 30 years doing it. And in my mind, I was like, oh no, this is such a big day. We can't push it. We have to do it. Oh my goodness. And I remember my boss looking at me and he said, just cancel everything. Just reach out to everyone and say that we're not shooting. And I was like, that's so much money wasted. Like why, so I'm trying to find all these ways to say, I think that we should try and do it. And he was the director EP, and he said, the best piece of advice that I've gotten is that people don't get far by finishing. It depends on where you are in your life, of course, but people don't get far by finishing things on time and under budget. Things make an impact when you do things the right way the first time. And if it's not going to be right, we're not doing it. And I was just like, oh my Lord. And I thought about, you start thinking about your own projects and, times where it's like, oh, well, you know what, it's not going to be right, but let's just push through and do it. And sometimes if you just stop and tell yourself, especially when I'm just speaking for myself, depending on what level you're at, people aren't checking for you and saying, oh, where's Lori's film? Why hasn't Lori made anything yet? I think the responsibility that we have for ourselves as filmmakers is putting out the best work that we possibly can. And if something is not right, stop, take a beat, pause, and make sure that the story's right, the visuals are right, everybody's on the same page, so that when we do it and we execute it, it's seamless, and the viewers that are going to be watching it feel that as well. So that's the best piece of advice that I've gotten.
Amazing. Do it well. Do it right.
Do it well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Next, anybody? We can just go ahead and make this pop on in. Edward.
I can say something real quick. I guess one thing that's been coming to me recently is just someone telling me that you're where you're supposed to be. Because a lot of times, I'm with this film, it is definitely I've progressed more than my last film. So I'm in spaces that I wasn't in the last film, but being in those spaces, I'm with people that are further along than me. So sometimes you want to try to compare yourselves to other people. I was talking to a guy, we was at the Martha's Vineyard Film Festival in August. And this guy, he was at Sundance, and he was at, he's already won 3 Oscar qualifying festivals. Just talking to him, but, he was just saying like, man, I had to put the work in. Like, nobody gave me a shot. People told me that this film was too long and that there was all these problems, but he kept saying he had to put the work in, and that he was where he was supposed to be, and that he didn't just show up here. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is that everybody's always putting in work that you don't see, whether they're young or old. And so, just to keep putting that work in, but also be financially responsible, because I feel like I'm breaking that and trying and doing well with it. So it's being able to understand that you can't do everything, that you have to be financially responsible and do things that make sense. So those would be my 2 advice.
Amazing. Yes. Dale? Oh, Dale, you're on mute. All good.
Unmute.
There you go. Yeah.
I'd say that the best advice I've ever received is surround yourself with the right people. I practice what I call a no jerk rule, which is, even when I'm hiring or casting, if someone sends off the wrong vibes that they're going to be trouble, I will cast or hire someone who is maybe a little less talented or a little less experienced, but I know I can work with. I believe in running a harmonious set.
Mm.
And so that's the best advice. Surround yourself with the best people, with the best and easiest people to work with.
Wow, that's really, really good. Thank you. Anybody else? All right, Lisa?
Well, the first piece I got, I'm a producer, and so this is very boring and practical, but whatever the line item is on your budget, add 25%. Just whatever you think your budget is, add 25%. And then the other is a little bit more esoteric, but it's that you can always pivot. I remember I had someone I know who's a writer who said, you know what, there's always another joke. If it's coming out of the actor's mouth and it doesn't make sense and they're not comfortable, there's always another joke you can write. There's always another way you can shoot the thing. There's just always a way you can pivot. There's always a way you can get to yes. So just keep yourself open for that.
That's great advice. And I'm going to keep that in mind just personally because that's really good. That's esoteric, but I love it. I'm obsessed with that. V, do you have anything for us?
Yeah, actually, I feel like my best advice is kind of similar to Dale's, but maybe with a different spin, as well as trust your gut, which again, I think that for me has been a long time to do. That is, even though I'm making decisions on these films, it's just like, you're like, oh, but something else could fall into play, or I should really pay attention to the budget here. So I think, Lori, you were also saying, your experience about, I just want it to be on time, but it's got to be bright. It's got to follow your intent, and being able to surround yourself with the right people to tell you, no, trust your gut, or no, let's look at this cut and see where you are, and to have people that you find trustworthy, you can share it in process without them, telling you to, I don't know, add a flaming skull or something. I don't know.
Awesome. Kiki, yay, we're here.
We've arrived.
Yeah.
I think one of the best pieces of advice I got from a directing coach I had was someone had a huge emotion as we were working, and everyone got really scared. I think to Edward's point, it's like, what do you do when these real things come up? You put kids on camera and then they have an emotional reaction. And this person was the opposite. They didn't go inward, they went outward. And I think we're working with vulnerable material. We want people to bring that. That's what we're hoping comes out on set. I think it happens in the crew as well as actors in front of the camera. When you're working with good material, you're working inside, to get back to our beginning, a vulnerable space. So I think making room for that and understanding that emotions come in all shapes and trying to get to the bottom of it, but really as a director, staying calm when those things happen and learning how to facilitate it and learning how to work with it and bring whatever is really happening into the film. Because I think what we hope to do is have real material that then brings out life and shows whatever it is we are trying to say or whatever it is we're trying to show. And the second those emotions happen, learning what to do with it and not being afraid of it. So I would say, don't be afraid of emotions when they happen, good or bad, learning how to work with them and having patience for human beings, because that's who we're telling stories about.
That's so good. Thank you. Justine.
Yeah, that was beautiful. I think for me, the two main ones are first being just get it out there, just start it, just do it. I think for me, I always have a lot of differing ideas. I'm like, which route should I go? But I find it hard to just to get the project started and get it going. So I think once you just start getting on paper, start talking to people, start developing these ideas, that's always what is really going to get the ball rolling. And I think this has kind of been said around, but just to iterate, trying to create as collaborative and healthy and kind atmosphere on set as possible. I feel like for me, coming from a performer background as well, I kind of want to be able to make sure that all the performers on my set feel very comfortable. They feel like their voice is always heard, crew as well. And just making sure everyone feels like they belong there and that they are going to be heard no matter what.
Absolutely. Claudia, for any of the actors out there that are watching this.
Yeah, I would say to piggyback on what V said as well, I would say to trust yourself, especially use the actor. Like the minute, sometimes you can go through imposter syndrome and say like, was I the right person? Was I chosen? Everyone all agreed and you were meant to be there the minute like you get to walk first on set. So you're that, it is meant for you to trust yourself, trust your work. And then as a whole is just for everyone, for the actors and the filmmakers, it's to enjoy the moment, because it could be like really stressful, but at that moment it's like it is a fun thing because we get to be storytellers, and storytelling has been around from we're kids till adult ongoing. So it's just enjoy that because it does go really quickly, but you get to play and tell stories. So also have fun.
Thank you so much. And you guys, right before we leave, we want to know who all, and Lori is leaving. So bye, Lori. We're going to wave you off. But we want to go ahead and just get your contact information for anybody that wants to look up more about you or your project. So Lori, you want to go ahead? Yep. Come back on. Go ahead and say it. Yeah.
Yes, you can see our film and learn more information about it at Remedial the Film on all social media platforms.
Remedial the Film. Thank you so much, Lori. We appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Bye. All right. Anybody else want to share their information for the audience here? Okay, Edward.
Yeah, so I'm Edward_Worthy on Instagram, and then Edward__Worthy. Some other guy took my one underscore, so I have to report that to Elon. But other than that, that's where you can find me on social media.
Great. Claudia or Lisa?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Oh.
Both.
Okay. Really quickly, you can find me on Instagram at Fa Carmel, FACARMELLE on Instagram, and just hello.
Lisa.
We are Romanova_short on Instagram. The writer-director Mark has directed by markcarreker.com. What Carreker is KAERCHER, like care with a K, share.
They're going to be rewatching this, so when you get to this part, rewind it.
KAERCHER. And then you can also look him up on
Perfect. Kiki?
You can find me at Go Parachute. That's my production company and where I like to run things out at and love to talk.
Yay. Okay. V or Justine? You guys have any contact information? Okay.
You can find me at Justine Caneda on Instagram.
Okay. Dale?
You can go to my website at Venisky, VENICESKYPRODS.com. And I'm also on Instagram, Dale Griffith Stamos. I think there's underscores between Dale and Stamos. And I'm on Facebook as well. Feel free to friend me.
I love it. Thank you. V.
Yeah, you can find my work or my past work at vanessasweet.com. You can also find me on Instagram at VBSweet. And yeah.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, we're going to say bye to you, all the filmmakers, as we're just saying bye. We hope you enjoyed this time, this informative conversation. Again, remember to go back and listen. Thank you so much for Imagine This, having the film festival.